Okay, cool. So yeah, we're recording now.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to watch this recording and engage in this activity with us. So we will be talking a little bit about the Big 10 identities and exploring what those identities mean in the context of the United States. But before we get into it, we'll go ahead and do some introductions. My name is Jaime Estrada. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I am the coordinator in the Office of Intercultural Student Affairs here at Appalachian.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Pepper. I'm the Director of International Student Scholar Services and Outreach, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Will Shepard. I'm the Associate Director for Intercultural Student Affairs, and I use he, him pronouns.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for also being here and willing to talk about this and share a little bit. So to go ahead and get us started, this is a quick table of contents. I'll get into an introduction really quick about why we're doing this. I'll give the definitions of the terms that you'll see on the identity wheel. And then we will, like the presenters will actually share a little bit about our own identities and answer some of the questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So you're probably wondering, what is this? Why should I do it? Why is it important? So we want to discuss identity because we want you to consider your identities and their impact on your everyday life. We also want you to consider how that may change or even remain the same while you're pursuing your education in the United States. So this is a time to consider not only how you relate to these identities, but how they also might impact the way others perceive you or treat you. Okay, so now we're going to get into the definitions. Bear with me. I will be reading out the definitions just for clarity's sake, and then we'll also include some examples. So to go ahead and get started, race is the first one, and that is any one of the groups of humans that are often divided into based on physical traits regarded as common among people of shared ancestry. And for all of these, just a quick side note, for all of these definitions, I have included a source, and we can also link the actual presentation to the space, or we can provide it to you via email. So you can actually click on these sources and do some more digging and learning if you would like. But some examples of race, and these are very specific to the United States. Like if you're ever filling out a form, these are the ones that'll most likely pop up. So the examples are white, Black or African American, American Indian or Alaskan Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander. And then getting into ethnicity. Ethnicity and race are oftentimes conflated, but they are two separate terms. So ethnicity refers to an ethnic group, which is a social group that shares a common and distinctive culture, religion, language, or the like. So some examples of that are Arabs. So Arabs populate different countries such as Algeria, Sudan, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, and they tend to be mostly Muslim. So that's one example. And then Jewish is also an ethnicity. So they share Judaism religion and languages like Yiddish and Hebrew, and originated from the Israelites. So this one has more to do with like culture and region. And it's just very complicated. And we have a lot of conversations about it in our particular spaces, because again, these terms are often conflated, but they can mean very different things. So it's important to define them and what they mean to you as you're talking about them. But also understanding it can mean different things for different people. And that's how a lot of things kind of work, especially in, at least I can speak for like higher education, that we just have to be very particular about what we're talking about, while us also understanding that not everyone sees it that way, which complicates things a little, but it's okay. Then getting into socioeconomic status, a class or status, that you actually can interchange that word. So socioeconomic status is the social standing or class of an individual or group. It is often measured as a combination of education, income, and occupation. And typically the way that you'll hear people talk about these is by saying lower class, middle class, or high class. Then we'll get into gender. So gender refers to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. These include norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a woman, man, girl, or boy, as well as relationships with each other. So gender is also complicated because it can mean so many different things and it can be acted out. And just like gender is like an expression essentially. And some examples of this are cisgender, agender, transgender, or gender fluid. But then again, when we're thinking of the binary, which is kind of what this definition gets at, there's either woman or man or girl or boy, but that could be its own presentation, but we'll leave it at that. Then sexual orientation is about who you are attracted to and want to have relationships with. Some examples are gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, and asexual. Then age, this can seem pretty self-explanatory. It's the length of time during which a being or thing has existed. And some examples of how this is classified is like a baby, an adolescent, teenager, young adult, middle-aged, or elderly. And then national origin is the nation where a person was born or where the person's ancestors come from. It also includes the diaspora of multi-ethnic states and societies that have a shared sense of common identity identical to that of a nation while being made up of several component ethnic groups. So this is like a country essentially. So some examples are Bangladesh, Jamaica, Russia, France, etc. First language is the language learned first and spoken best. I really love that definition, that adding that little caveat of the one spoken best, used especially when someone speaks more than one language. Of course, it can really be any language, but some examples are Spanish, German, French, or Portuguese. Then ability can also be a complicated one. So it is a power or capacity to do or act physically, mentally, legally, morally, financially, etc. And when we talk about this, this could also be its own presentation, but I think it typically comes in like deficit language. So when we talk about ability, it's often expressed in things that are challenging or we're not able to do. So some different types of ability include having cerebral palsy, a traumatic brain injury, depression, anxiety, ADHD, hearing loss, and there's many, many more. And then lastly, religion or spiritual affiliation is a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, especially when considered as the creation of a superhuman agency or agencies, usually involving devotional and ritual observances, and often containing a moral code governing the conduct of human affairs. So some examples are Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and Buddhism. So those are all the definitions. I hope that was helpful. Again, we will share this presentation and you can go into the source links and look at different definitions to get a better understanding, or do your own research to see how these might fit into your own life. But we will go ahead and, well, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay and Will to share a little bit about their personal identities and experiences. So I'll ask them to answer 2 questions. So of the 10 identities we just discussed, which identities do you think about most often? And which identities do you think about least often? And whoever's comfortable sharing first.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Jamie. I can go first. And just to give a little background too, and do you mind, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah.
So I can kind of show. So each of you are going to get a link to a worksheet that looks like this. So all the identities that Jaini just talked about are written here. So you can see race, ethnicity, socioeconomic class, and those are really kind of private or personal to you. And so we're not necessarily asking you to share with other people all the different identities, because you may not be ready to share all of those in a public way. But it's really important that you at least take time to fill it out for yourself so that you can kind of think through those identities. And so I did that. Also, I went through the process of filling this out. And then there are also questions in the middle of the circle to help you think about identities that are really important to you, that you think about all the time, or others that maybe you don't really think about that often, or it's just not something that occurs to you to think about. And that is also an important exercise, because we want you to start thinking about identities that are really important to you now, maybe in your home country, and starting to anticipate what identities might be more important to you as you come to the US. So getting back to your original question too, of what identities do you think about most often? For me, an identity I think about a lot is my age. And this is something that has been true throughout my life. I feel like I'm always comparing myself to other people in my same age group and thinking, okay, when I was in college, I was like, I'm 20 now, I need to be thinking about getting a job. Am I earning the right grades and doing everything I'm supposed to? Okay, now that I'm 25, am I dating someone? Do I have, a stable relationship? Am I like checking that box? Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, okay, do I need to be getting married and having children soon and buying a house? And so I feel like I'm constantly thinking about my age, and if the age that I'm at is like on track with what I think is expected of me at this given age. So that's one identity. I also think a lot about socioeconomic status, especially when I'm with my sister. She makes a lot more money than I do. And so when we go out to a restaurant, I think about my socioeconomic status a lot, because I'm trying to order something that's not very expensive on the menu, and she wants appetizers and drinks and a dessert and is really enjoying. And so those are a couple examples of moments where those identities are really front of mind for me. But Will, what about you?
Sure, thanks, Lindsay. For my identities that I think about most often, first is probably my race. As I see different things going on in the country of the US and other countries, I think about being in a minoritized group or underrepresented. I want to know how I am seen in other spaces when I'm there. And so, sometimes do I need to show up in a defense mode, or can I be vulnerable? So those are some things that I do think about often. And then also, even on the same vein of thinking about things that are going on, is my gender. When I show up in spaces, do I give other genders the space for them to feel heard, instead of just saying, oh, I need everybody to hear my ideas? So, and also, am I showing up in a way that is not threatening, but is it in a manner that someone may feel that is off? So I do think about those things. And then, Lindsay, like you said, social economic status. We all know everything's is increasing in prices now and so forth across the world. So how am I able to even meet the basic needs, but also have the money to do the things I want to do when I want to travel? Can I enjoy all of the things that I see that make me happy when I'm on vacation or so forth? So those are most of the things I think about in my identities.
Mhm. In terms of identities, I think about least often. I know for me, I don't often think about being a US American. It's something when I'm here in the US, I kind of take for granted. But as soon as I leave the country, which I'm about to do in a couple weeks, I immediately take on my identity as being an American and think it's really important for me to represent my country well, because I might be the only American that people meet. even if that's completely absurd that one person should be the representative of an entire country, it's still something that I take on that identity. I'm originally from Minnesota, which is in the middle and the north of the US. And I think about my identity as being a Minnesotan a lot more when I leave Minnesota, when I'm in the south of the US, or even when I'm abroad. It's an identity that suddenly I feel like I'm very proud of. And I feel like I have to represent well, or maybe even sometimes defend when I'm around other people who don't share that same identity. But on a day-to-day basis here in Boone, I don't think of it that often. So it's just kind of an example of ways that that identity shifts for me, or how much I think about it, depending on kind of the context that I'm in.
I believe for me, the least identity I think about is first language. I don't think about speaking English every day, as I can speak it, I can write it. And so usually everybody I interact with speak English as their first language. Now, I do know a little bit of Spanish and Korean, but if necessary, can I speak those in a setting? Yes, but it would be harder for me to be able to communicate in a way where I would be understood with everything I say. So thinking about that, if I have the basis to switch into different languages and speak them well, that is amazing on my part. I wish I knew those languages even better. But honestly, English as a first language, I don't think about that as I'm around everybody that speaks that language as their first language usually. So, you know, coming to international spaces or traveling abroad, you know, can I adapt to different areas that speak another language? If you have it, great. It's a tool that I think is probably needed more often than not. But yeah, so that's where I'm at on my list of my identities.
So,
Awesome.
and hopefully that just kind of helps all of you to start thinking again about the identities that are most important to you, but also how those might change when you leave your home country and come to the US.
Yes, thank you both so much for sharing a little bit about your personal experiences, giving some examples. And to go ahead and wrap us up, thank you so much for watching this video, and we really hope that you engage in this activity to explore your identities and preparation for traveling to the United States. We also want to recognize that this might be the first time you've done an activity like this, especially thinking in this context of being in the United States, and it could be really difficult to envision how your experience might change in a different country. But we really hope that this was a helpful start, and we're really happy to engage with you further in this conversation. If you'd like, even after doing this activity, or when you're on campus, we're here to explore that with you, discuss it, and help out in any way that we can. But that is all I have. Lindsay or Will, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think you wrapped it up well. So like Jenny said, at this point, you'll find a link to this sheet, and we're asking you to fill it out and reflect on it. And then we will use this more during orientation. And also we'll have a follow-up event for this in September, where you can discuss some of these questions and your experiences after you've had a couple weeks in the US, but also get a chance to hear from other students who are already here at Appalachian and can share some of their experiences as well. Will, anything else?
Just want to say thanks to everybody for watching the video. I hope it was educational for you, and you gained some things that can help you going forward. So appreciate you.
Yes. And if you wanted to connect with myself or Will, Lindsay has our information. We're also located right below the office or the OIED. So easy to find us if you ever need anything. But thanks so much, and we're excited to see you soon.
Yeah, thanks.